So my occupation has been as a physiotherapist, and I've had thousands of glowing compliments on how I can help people, and from staff as well as patients. I kind of think that I don't want to be working in reinforcing other people's physical limitations, pains, things like that. I want to go somewhere else. It's taught me a lot about my own physical pains and maybe what I need to move from, and in my new rockets of desire.
Can you hear him? If you could speak a little.
I'm wondering about working as a caring professional with people with physical pain, reinforcing that in them. And I'm excellent at caregiving other people and being insightful for what they need, and I'm the opposite for what I need. And that relates to the other 2 points, which I'd really like some help with. I'm just realizing, as I was saying, that my upbringing kind of brainwashed me in a few ways. Tremendously anxious and constantly verbal mother who I love and have forgiven many times and don't have any anger towards her. She did her best, but I'm this person that is hypervigilant and reactive and provocative like she is through training, I guess. And the third one is, there's a family reunion coming up. I haven't seen my brother in many years. I've chosen to be away from him because it feels horrible to be around him. I was raised being humiliated by him the whole time of my upbringing, and just realizing it in the last few years, how it has affected me. And it feels better not having him in my life, but it doesn't feel better to my parents. And I'm confused about how to be with that, especially since the reunion's coming up.
Well, we enjoyed your examples for a number of reasons, but the primary reason that we think that they are of value in the discussion that we're having here is because when you attempt to factor in so many things, you're factoring in what's happening with patients and what they've come to. You're factoring in your past experience and how it affected you. Now you're factoring in the idea of the family reunion, how you feel about all of them and how they have felt about you, not just now but over time. And when you try to consider all of those things, life can become quite a jumble, can't it?
It can.
It's sort of like trying to watch 12 television programs all at once or listen to all the radio stations at once.
Mom can do that.
It's not easy to contemplate all of those things at once. So when you take any issue that is activated within you and you ask yourself, what do I want? Tell us from the first example that you offer relative to your work and relative to your ability to assist others and relative to your effectiveness with them. Tell us what that work has produced within you in terms of desire. Because you see, that's what we want to know about every moment in time. What is it doing in terms of producing a desire? What desire do you think that you've launched that's waiting for you in vibrational escrow as a result of interacting with all of these patients over time?
I've been, for a long time, dreaming of running away and joining the circus, and the circuses do use PTs now. And I actually want to morph that into writing circus pieces, which I've already started to do, and instructing people in my techniques that I've learned and getting the focus enough to do that.
So what you're saying is, in my exposure to so many people who needed the therapy and needed my insight and who benefited from it, I have systematically and gradually created a future dream scenario where I am doing what I'm trained to do, but in environments where people are not so far from their ability to achieve it. In other words, I want to go into a happier environment where there is a greater probability of my helping someone else close the gap between what they want and what they're able to do.
Yeah, somewhat,
yes?
Yeah.
Somewhat?
I have a tremendous desire to create beauty in the world, and gardens, sculptures, circus pieces, and that's where I'd like my focus to go, instead of with people who, are chain smokers and have cancer and don't take care of them for their physical bodies.
You see, what's happened to you, and we'll address this first question first, is that over time you've come to understand what we know and what we were attempting to explain here today when we say someone who's here on the emotional scale, who is interacting with someone who's here on the emotional scale, they do not have a very valuable interchange because they can't hear each other. You can't really relate to where they are in any meaningful way, and they can't really relate to where you are in any meaningful way. The gap is so great that it is usually, and we're not saying that you have not helped them, but in helping them in terms of their physical progress, your emotional stance has taken a beating, and that's why you want to run away and join the circus. In other words, you have come to understand that there's one thing about doing what you need to do. A lot of people do the responsible thing that they need to do, and then there's the thing that you want to do. And so you've sort of been feeling trapped in this environment where you're doing the thing you were trained to do, and you're doing the thing that you're good at doing, but it is not necessarily the thing that you want to do. And the longer you do it, the more rockets of desire you launch, and the bigger gap becomes apparent between what you're doing with your life day to day and what you really want to do. It's an interesting thing, the parallels in the three offerings that you have given to us here, because when you think about the relationship that you had with your brother, you did just put time and distance between you. In other words, you did sort of run away from that. You're not doing the thing that you feel like you should do. And here you are grappling with this same thing again. There's a family reunion coming up, and what I should do is what a good family member would do, and what I should do is what my mother would really like me to do, but what I want to do is something entirely different. And so this is the thing that comes up all the time when people begin listening to Abraham, as we talk about you being the deliberate creator of your experience, because it's hard for you, and we hear this inherent in all of the things that you're talking about here, it's hard for you to determine what's the appropriate thing to do when others who are important to you, or even society, or even medicine, would have you do one thing while what your heart is calling for is something else. How do I make sense of all of this? Do I really just get to follow my bliss? And the way we answer this, we think it is a very, very good answer, is that there is this action journey that you are certainly upon. And the action journey, the best way of describing it is it's sort of what your life has culminated to so far. And it's the obligations and commitments and beliefs that you hold. And all of those obligations and commitments and beliefs that you hold have culminated and are manifesting in the way your life is unfolding. For example, we were talking with a woman one day who has very painful arthritis in her hips, and she wanted to talk about what she could do about remedying it. And we were explaining to her, well, that's your action journey right now. That's sort of where you're at. In other words, that's what is, and it's not going to change this red hot minute. It's not going to change, most likely, very much, even over a period of time. That's sort of where you're at. But at the same time, you've got this action journey that is about painful arthritis in your hips. You've also got an emotional journey that's running right alongside, concurrent with it. And that emotional journey is the one that we want you to give your undivided attention to. In other words, we said to her, you have arthritis in your hips, and you could feel fearful about it. Or you have arthritis in your hips and you could feel hopeful about it. And what we wanted to point out to her was the enormous vibrational difference between fearful and hopeful, because it is the difference between recovery or not. Really it is. And so we think that you've shown yourself, in other words, as you work with people, did you notice some recovering and some not?
Absolutely.
And were you able to conclude from the person-to-person research that you were observing that the emotional journey that they were on was making the difference in their progress? Could you see a difference in results based upon the mood or attitude of your patient?
Absolutely. I get them to laugh a lot, as much as possible, and I have used intuitively a lot of the techniques, and since I've started listening to the tapes, it's way better even.
So
Great.
Would you acknowledge then that while you do have some power of influence with them, that part of what hinders you as a healer trying to help someone to improve the vibrational content of their mood or attitude, did you notice that some of them were sort of set in their ways,
yeah.
like your mother?
Yeah.
Did you notice that some of them are sort of set in their ways, even like you, relative to your mother?
Yeah.
In other words, now you said it to us and we're reflecting it back to you, but what we're all saying to each other in our observation of what is that people tend to observe what's happening around them, and then they tend to become like that. And we think that the discomfort that you're feeling in this very marvelous profession that you've fashioned for yourself is that you're discovering that you can't really do very much for anyone outside of their emotional journey.
Right.
And we think the reason that you want to run away and join the circus is because you're beginning to realize that there are therapies of the mind, or therapies of the heart, or therapies of the attitude that are really the therapies that are the most meaningful. And without that, all of the physical therapy in the world is not going to accomplish very much. Yes?
Yes.
Well, isn't that a marvelous conclusion? In other words, isn't it wonderful that you've come to understand how important attitude and mood or vibration is in the motion forward toward anything?
It's a wonderful gift.
But does that mean then that do you believe that anybody can change an attitude?
Yes.
And do you believe that you have the power to, in any moment, be the one that affects that attitudinal change?
Yes. Hesitating, but yes.
Do you think it's worth the price that you might have to pay?
Absolutely.
So, what's your hesitancy about going to this family reunion? That was a well-laid trap, we might add.
No, it's I've been through that whole process hundreds of times, and what happens to me is that I lose my sense of who I am and what I want and how I feel, just like that when I'm around family. And in my broader life, I often get distracted from how I feel and what I want, and don't know how to get back there.
Here's the reason for that. When you run away and join the circus, when you take your physical body away from something where there is less likelihood of the problematic things being activated and troubling you, they stayed right where they were. And then when you walk back into the environment, they're easily activated.
Okay.
Where when you move up the emotional scale relative to something, you put yourself in a different vibrational place. And then even though you might walk back into the familiar environment, it doesn't easily activate. Esther was just visiting her mother on the way here, and her father made his reemergence into non-physical a little over 2 years ago. And as Esther was walking up the steps to the house, she was sort of bracing herself because she knows what being in that environment and seeing all of those familiar things, she knows the potential that it has in causing her vibration to go to a place where it once was that is not as pleasing as where it now is. So she sat in the car for a little while, hoping not to be noticed, and made a decision about how she saw the day unfolding. And she painted a picture of her interaction with her mother and with the people who are there helping her mother, and got her vibration in a place so that when she walked in the door, Esther's vibration dominated. And Esther thought, oh, this feels ever so much better. And then just for a moment she thought, I'm a little surprised that I'm able to control the way I feel, because I haven't been able to do that standing in this environment before. And then there are several people that are in and out of the house in various phases of caregiving to Esther's mother. And a woman came, and Esther greeted her, and then she left. And then another young girl came. And when she walked in the room, Esther actually felt the atmosphere change. It became light and bright. It looked to Esther like somebody had turned a light bulb on, even though nothing had changed. And Esther looked at this beautiful woman standing before her, and the woman said, I have your book. Will you sign it for me? Well, Esther was amazed, because nothing that Esther has done in terms of work has ever been well received at all in her mother's house.